Through gritted teeth, a man with a scar on his face takes his frustrations out on a punching bag. He notes that while there are people who hesitate to take their own lives, some openly welcome life and death. He believes it's just a matter of perspective, and getting better in physical and technical aspects doesn't mean anything. For this reason, he remains skeptical of any form of martial arts. Speaking of which, he barges into a dojo where young students are currently practicing. The chief instructor there asks Scarface if he wants to join them, to which he hints at challenging him instead. Not even interested, he apologizes and states he is busy training his sons. While Scarface tries to provoke the chief instructor, the latter introduces the youngest boy and suggests he entertains the guest in his stead. Despite feeling annoyed, he agrees to fight a noticeably smaller opponent. At that instant, Scarface announces he will save him the trouble of lessening the mouths he feeds. With the chief instructor smirking in the background, the one-on-one battle begins. Wondering about the best martial arts type that suits fighters who intend to kill their opponent, Scarface throws the first punch. Without any signs of struggle, the kid dodges his attack. Given the rise of the different martial arts styles, he believes none of these answer his question. With one swift move, the kid pushes his gut and lands an elbow strike on his chin. While he wipes the smug look off his face, he claims that martial arts have just become games designed to entertain an audience. As his body gets slammed on the floor, he can only think of one technique that sets itself apart from other combat practices. Leaping into the air, the kid ends the one-sided battle with what he has in mind, the legendary killing art, Shoshin Katsushiryu Kempo. 15 years later, in a quiet and beautiful city, someone's keyboard inside an office is making a noise. The employees flock around the man behind it, all sharing the same expression at his strong dedication towards his job. Turns out that it's Akamori, the small but terrible kid who is now a grown-up and working as a salaryman. For treating himself as the company's livestock, Katsuragi, one of his seniors, suggests he calls it a day. Akamori explains he is working overtime. For the record, he's been doing it since day one. His senior points out that he's taking all the work, but as naive as he is, he couldn't care less. Funnily enough, when Katsuragi reminds him to make his job easier, he hands over the pending paperwork. Having had enough of Akamori's stupidity, he lets him be. For the last time, Katsuragi invites him over for a drink, but he still declines. Just as his senior leaves, Akamori continues working until Kate, the girl sitting next to him, approaches him. She inquires if he is working overtime again, and he says yes. When she asks what's keeping him so busy, he mentions all the tasks he still needs to finish. Kate can't believe he's doing the heavy workload all by himself. With a faint smile, Akamori shares that he's been trusted to do someone else's job. Feeling bad about how his colleagues treat him, she advises Akamori to take care of his health. He makes it clear he's fine, even though he also works at home. Drowning in work, he apologizes for not giving her enough attention as her mentor. Apparently, Kate is a trainee, and Akamori has been assigned to train her. While he thinks he's not helping her in the workplace in any way, she claims that just sitting next to him already taught her a lot. Akamori reminds her not to hesitate to ask for his help should she encounter any problem at work. Soon enough, Kate goes home, leaving Akamori alone in the office. Time passes, and as he refuses to take a break, the mental strain and overwork start to take its toll. Feeling exhausted, he slowly leans on the table. For a second, he considers sleeping for 5 minutes, but he knows he will wake up the next morning if he does it. Unable to focus on his current condition, he decides to finish his work at home. Later that night, he's finally out of the office, and he can't wait to rest. On the way home, he wonders whether or not he has submitted today's report. Unsure, he stops by the playground and sits on a bench to check if he did. While taking out his laptop, some of his files fall onto the ground. Upon picking them up, he catches sight of a small gang assaulting someone. The elderly man keeps apologizing, but they just won't stop hitting him. Akamori watches in disbelief as the poor victim suffers at the hands of the younger blokes. He concludes that only good-for-nothing people are capable of doing such a thing. Turning a blind eye to the disturbing scene, he lets out a sigh and searches for another place. Just then, the bad guys call for his attention. As Akamori stands before the 3 men, the big guy asks if he has witnessed what they did. He quickly denies it and stresses that he was only taking a break. Suddenly, he slaps him in the face and demands he give him his money. Akamori says he doesn't have any, but they don't believe him. Angered, the big guy grabs him by his tie and threatens to kill him. In a snap of a finger, his expression changes. In a frightening manner, Akamori asks, "Kill me?" Well, he declares that killing him won't be easy. Glaring at the big guy, he asks what he said about taking someone's life. Before he can even speak, he finds himself crashing on the ground. With fear in his eyes, he warns him that he will break his 5th vertebrae. Akamori then mentions what will happen next that will eventually lead him to becoming paralyzed. Akamori says he will choke him until he breathes his last, and before he knows it, he's gone. While the big guy's life flashes before his eyes, Akamori tells his minions he won't let them get away. Hearing this, the 2 guys take out a folding knife and a stun gun. The black-haired guy charges first, attacking him from behind. Grabbing his arm, Akamori deflects his attack. With the man aiming for his shoulder, he figures out that he fears stabbing himself. In a short while, a solid kick lands on his face, disarming him and breaking his nose in the process. As he returns the knife to the second guy, the last member of the gang intervenes, screaming, "Die!" The blonde guy launches an attack only to get restrained before he can even immobilize him. Given the fact that he wants to kill him, Akamori mocks him for using a stun gun. Shortly, the sound of his own bones cracking fills his ears. Akamori suggests he uses a taser next time if he really wants to take him down. Unwilling to accept his defeat, the blonde guy lashes out at him. Akamori grabs his head, threatening to strike him. As he stares daggers at the blonde guy, he desperately stops himself from breaking his vertebrae. Unable to move, tears start welling up in his eyes. At the same time, he pisses his pants. There and then, Akamori remembers the time he defeated Scarface, which earned his father's praise. According to him, even though Scarface has the qualities and skills of an MMA fighter, his power is still no match against Akamori and his legendary technique. It is then revealed that Scarface was the third person in his kill count, and his next goal was to increase it to 10. The chief instructor reminded the rest of his students that they would also be involved. As he urged Akamori to push himself further, he acknowledges him as the most gifted killer in their family. Not long after pinning the blonde guy on the ground, Akamori lets him go. Rather than crush his bones, he picks up his bag and changes his mind. As he puts it, he will not take his life because he wants to stay as a mere salaryman. It appears that he only wants him to realize that killing someone isn't easy. Truth be told, in his case, it's easier than working as a salaryman. As if nothing happened, Akamori leaves the troublesome trio with their tails between their legs. Back in the office the next day, Akamori is spotted taking a nap, with his bottled coffee about to fall from the table. Meanwhile, Kate asks Katsuragi if he teaches Shorinji Kempo. He nods, saying he has elementary and middle schoolers as his students. Kate shares that she is a member of the Shorinji Club during college, to which Katsuragi reveals he has met his wife there. The latter suggests she tries martial arts as an exercise, but she declines, stressing that it's tiring. Katsuragi adds that it's a good way to relieve stress as he highlights Akamori's stressful lifestyle. While they are at it, the bottle finally falls from the table, but he catches it with his foot. To wake himself up, he decides to wash his face. He runs into Katsuragi and Kate, with the former advising him to take a break. Punching in the air, he encourages Akamori to play some sports to feel better. Kate cuts in and says he's way too busy. That said, she's convinced that Akamori is fond of sports. When she asks if he has a sports buddy, he replies that he usually stays at home and watches TV shows, particularly the salaryman Jintaro. While she claims it's boring, Akamori says otherwise, and points out that the show is a great learning experience. Even though his coworkers can't comprehend his sudden excitement about it, Akamori explains that the show is about a salaryman who desires to achieve perfect attendance. Katsuragi alerts him that it won't do him any good if he keeps shutting himself home and watching the said show. He then takes his chance to invite him to a Shorinji Kempo class. To fully convince him, he notes that he can be popular among women if he becomes strong, but he still rejects it. After getting turned down, he claims that Akamori will die if he gets caught up in a fight. To see how he will defend himself if ever, his senior acts like a drunk man and attempts to kick him. Playing the fool, Akamori ducks to dodge his attack. With that, Katsuragi cracks up and calls him the funny Jackie Chan. Night falls, and inside an amusement arcade, a mysterious man appears. Turns out he's the boss of the guys who assaulted an elderly man. As he repeats what they told him about getting beaten single-handedly by a salaryman, he tries to keep his composure. With their absence yesterday, the boss informs him that they missed an important drug deal. As he expresses his disappointment towards the trio, he tells them they overestimated themselves, or more accurately, they underestimated him. Following the postponement of the illegal transaction, the boss warns them that they will be dealt with once they get caught. Sweating bullets, the blonde guy reveals that Akamori is not a typical salaryman, and no one can win against him. Hearing this, the boss jokingly says he's scared. He walks nearer to the blonde guy and raises his foot. Going by the name Kenshin, he questions that the former kickboxing junior champion won't stand a chance against the salaryman. Needless to say, the blonde guy takes his words back. Kenshin taps his head as he tells him how unlucky he is. After that, he drops to his knees and apologizes non-stop. Lifting his chin up with his shoe, Kenshin asks if the salaryman really threatened to kill them. The blonde guy says yes, and tells his boss that nothing happened after he used a stun gun against him. While Kenshin still has doubts, the black-haired guy speaks up and reveals that his attacks were also useless against him. And so, Kenshin concludes that he might be a martial artist. According to him, the salaryman might have mastered the art of dodging in Chinese martial arts. While the method of avoiding attacks seems easy, he makes it clear it's hard to master. Stuttering, the blonde guy admits he doesn't know much about it, but he's confident that Kenshin will see through his moves and defeat him. However, he fails to see his boss's next move, leaving him to get kicked straight in the face. As a result, there are now 2 of them with broken noses. Displeased at how he suddenly changed his opinion about his strength, Kenshin is determined to show them what he can do. Rather than waste his time beating them, he swears to hunt down his new prey. Walking in the streets, Akamori gets startled as he doesn't expect to receive a call from his senior late at night. When he asks what's the matter, Katsuragi requests that he send some important documents as soon as possible. He adds that he would really appreciate it if he could send them within 30 minutes. Without a nearby cafe or any park, Akamori decides to run home. As expected, Katsuragi even asks if he can actually run. As soon as the call ends, Akamori rushes home until he stumbles upon Kenshin and the gang. Now wearing a smug face, the big guy confronts him. He then asks if he remembers what happened last night. In response, Akamori states he should be the one asking the question. And just like that, the big guy's expression changes, forcing Kenshin to interfere. As they stare at each other's eyes, Kenshin believes he doesn't want to fight. He also thinks that Akamori is a weakling, judging by his physique. While he questions if he's the one responsible for defeating the trio, the big guy asks him to deal with him. Lowering himself into a fighting stance, Kenshin declares to get rid of the reason behind yesterday's failed transaction. At that moment, Akamori wonders why he let them go freely last night. As he mutters, "Maybe you can find out after killing you." His dark aura finally convinces Kenshin that he's up against the real deal. Calling Akamori unlucky, Kenshin initiates the battle. He launches a powerful sidekick, but he effortlessly dodges his move. He then grabs his leg and throws his whole body into midair. Before his head hits the ground, Akamori catches it with his foot. He admits that he doesn't get it because he can kill him on the spot if he wants to. He also tells Kenshin that their encounter is not about luck. As he targets his vertebral column, the terrified Kenshin pleads with him to stop. Much to his relief, Akamori shows him mercy and playfully tells him he's only a salaryman. Strangely enough, he agrees with Kenshin for calling him unlucky earlier. On the other hand, the kickboxer is the lucky one because Akamori has quit killing people. Going back to business, Akamori hurries home to send the documents his senior requested. Unbeknownst to him, a stranger passing by has recorded the entire incident. The man uploads the video on the internet, and in a few hours, it goes viral. Safe to say that the people who saw the clip were amazed at his exceptional strength. As the video garners thousands of views, it reaches a karateka. He looks at Akamori's movements closely and figures out that he can't be compared to a typical martial artist. Furious, he didn't realize that he just broke his phone screen. Aside from the karateka, 2 boxers watched the clip and seemed to know the truth about the technique Akamori used. It didn't take long until the news spread like wildfire among martial artists in Japan. Without a doubt, they are aware that whoever's in the video is not an ordinary master, but the possessor of the infamous Shoshin Katsushiryu Kempo. Following the narrative, the legendary killing art has existed for centuries and has been passed down to the Akamori family, also known as the Bloody Family. It involves flawless defensive techniques and offensive techniques that target the victim's vertebrae. Due to it being responsible for the deaths of multiple people, the teaching of darkness has become the martial artist's sworn enemy, not to mention that their numbers are growing more each day. Things escalate quickly when the martial artists gather to discuss the pressing matter. It appears that even though they've always had their eyes on the Akamori family, they couldn't track down their whereabouts. Now that they have evidence that their mortal enemy is roaming the streets, a murmur of approval to hunt him down echoes across the room. Crushing the phone with his bare hand, a middle-aged man orders a kill on sight. Speaking of their target, Akamori is still running on the way home. Elsewhere, the man who recorded the video shares a drink with a friend. He explains that phones are quite handy when strolling around because of the random things happening in the streets, just waiting to be captured. When he's asked if anyone from the media contacted him for an interview, he says yes, but he turned them down because they did not offer money. That is, until he receives a message from an anonymous sender. He's sick of receiving messages until he opens the most recent one. This time, someone is offering him a reward in exchange for any information about the person in the video. With hands shaking, his eyes widen when the sender offers 20 million yen. The following day, in the space cafe in the office, Kate and Akamori discuss their upcoming presentation about a new product. He instructs her to note any questions that will be thrown at them. Even though she's only assigned small tasks, she thanks him for always guiding her. After saying good luck to each other, Akamori advises Kate to share her ideas. He then asks if there's anything she has yet to understand clearly. While she thinks about it, she gets interrupted when their coworkers speak about the breaking news. As it turns out, a man killed a police officer who was interrogating him. To make matters worse, it's nearby, and the suspect managed to escape. While they continue to talk about it, the unbothered Akamori proceeds to check the list of the participants for the presentation. Then, Kate inquires if he's not affected by the news at all. He tells her, "Why would I?" leaving her confused because any normal person who's aware that a killer is on the run will definitely feel uneasy. After a brief pause, he comes up with an excuse, claiming he usually gets scared, but this time he just zoned out. Kate confesses that she worries for her safety every time she hears news like that, and so he volunteers to take her to the nearby station after work. While she protests against the idea, he assures her it's not a problem. This is because his favorite TV show will be aired a little late, so he has time to spare. He adds that since they've always been together in the office, they should walk home together as if they are lovers. After recovering from being taken aback momentarily, the flustered Kate tells him there's a right time to joke around. He apologizes for unintentionally rizzing her up and tries to pull himself together. Kate calls him an airhead and a funny guy. As he lets out an awkward laugh, someone taps his head and agrees to Kate for calling him an airhead. It's Katsuragi who thanks him for his hard work. From praising Akamori, he roasts him by telling Kate that he can be foolish, so she must get used to his weird behavior. When Katsuragi mentions how he was much worse when he first joined the company, the irritated Akamori asks him to stop. Of course, Kate is interested to hear the story. Back then, an employee named Saito took a day off due to his father's passing. With this, Akamori noted that he could also take a day off if his parents passed away. Indeed, Katsuragi couldn't believe that he didn't know about it. For the nth time, Akamori gets called as an airhead. Kate teases him and mentions that even students are aware of it. In his defense, Akamori stresses that the whole morning and day off thing was not taught in the university he enrolled at. In the end, the two stopped arguing with him. Later on, after dropping Kate to the station, Akamori looks around and notices that the city has increased its level of security. If anything, he finds the unsettling incident normal. This leads him to question if he has learned enough after bidding his previous life goodbye. Having been exposed to a different environment, he hates his father for it. In another flashback, Akamori told his father he wanted to stop killing people. Disappointed, his father said it was out of his character and that he would lose the main reason for his existence. He claimed that for a 16-year-old, he must have been struggling to bear the weight of eliminating 1,000 martial artists. Akamori said he was not bothered by it because of the way he raised him. Instead, every time he took someone's life, he felt like a part of him disappeared. After his father said he could be feeling empty or weak, he spoke about a certain match that decided his fate. To his surprise, he gave him permission to leave the dojo and asked him to blend in the society. When Akamori asked why he did not oppose his decision, his father said he wouldn't escape the never-ending struggle of their family anyway. Back to the present, Akamori gets onto the subway train. Talking to himself, he promises to lead a normal life just like the passengers inside. That is until he gets into another trouble as someone takes out a knife. The stranger immediately attacks him, and before he can react, he's been stabbed from behind. Flashing an evil grin, the culprit says, "Found you." A commotion breaks out, putting the people in a state of panic. They push themselves against each other as they run away from the scene. The attacker states they've been looking for him, and luckily for him, he got him first. The man remarks that he killed his father 3 years ago, which drove his mother to take her own life. From then on, he swore to get his revenge with his own hands. From feeling satisfied at the sight of his target suffering, he suddenly froze. To his horror, he sees Akamori's reflection in the window, alive and well, as he mistakenly took someone else's life. Looking at Akamori, the man notices his bag resembling the one from the video, thus confirming his suspicion. Soon afterward, he lunges at him with his knife. As the man keeps throwing aggressive charges, Akamori reminds him not to mess up his commuter pass. Without a single scratch, Akamori disarms the attacker and gives him an elbow strike. While the man lies unconscious on the floor, Akamori catches the knife and announces he is only a salaryman. Having said that, the passengers can't believe what they just witnessed. Even though the attacker has already been dealt with, everyone seems to be more scared of Akamori. Looking around, he feels relieved that his colleagues are not riding the same train. Dropping the knife, he takes his phone out to check the time. Following the incident, he worries that he won't arrive home in time for the release of the new episode of his favorite TV show. Just then, the authorities arrive at the scene to conduct an investigation. One of the officers asks a witness who's still processing his thoughts and emotions. He reveals that the attacker was taken down instantly by another passenger. He also says that the salaryman left the station in a hurry. Outside the station, Akamori, who's getting tired of the same scenario tempting him to kill people, decides to take a taxi to arrive home earlier. He then realizes that he lost one of his shirt's buttons. Just as he leaves, while throwing a fit after having a bad day, his pursuers enter the picture. After successfully locating him, they feel glad that the 20 million yen didn't go to waste. In haste, they chase after Akamori. A new character then turns up, and this man in eyeglasses assures his comrade that they will avenge their ancestors. Tossing Akamori's button, the ex-professional sets his eyes on the sixth son of the bloody family and vows to end their legendary killing art. The next day at the office, Kate seems to be having a hard time. While she can't think of a good idea to present at the upcoming meeting, Akamori arrives in the office. When he asks her what's wrong, she admits that she can't come up with a good concept. Akamori suggests she thinks of something new on the cover and the higher-ups will surely approve it. To give her an idea, he hands his own work as a reference. Upon seeing his output, She compliments his unique concept. However, Kate feels a little uneasy looking at the bald eagle. Akamori then tells her that his idea is quite fresh, leaving her thinking about why he chose an animal-shaped food. Minutes later, their senior steps in and calls Akamori. At that point, he informs him about the news that's being talked about in the media outlets. Alarmed, Katsuragi informs Akamori that someone was attacked inside a train near their office and the victim died. With the shocked Kate in the background, she shares that Akamori was riding the same train yesterday. Talking to himself, he did not expect that the incident would get so much attention. Trying to act calm, Akamori claims that it happened on the train car next to where he was. Hearing this, Kate mentions the video she saw on the internet. She states that the mysterious passenger left the attacker half dead, to which Akamori says he has no idea. Just as Katsuragi recalls seeing the same clip, it finally hits Akamori. As soon as he sees the video thumbnail from the train incident, which the netizens connect to his encounter with Kenshin and the gang, he finds himself in deep trouble. With the title Strongest Salaryman, Katsuragi asks Akamori to watch the videos. As an excuse, the latter claims that he's not into watching violent stuff. Against his wishes, his senior decides to play the videos. Inside an abandoned building, Kenshin and a new character are seen surrounded by a number of unconscious bodies. The long-haired guy remarks that their victims pretended to be part of their group to carry out whatever they wanted. Introduced as Yusuke, the Hangure gang leader declares that the video where a salaryman humiliated Kenshin is far more annoying than the men they had beaten. When he asks if he's mocking him, he calls him stupid, stressing that he's only concerned about him. Displeased with his attitude, Yusuke gives him a gun. He notes that if he can't handle the disrespect and keeps acting like a child, he might as well get rid of himself along with his pride. Kenshin takes the gun and then drops it. He threatens their leader that he will also kill him. As the tension rises between the two, some Yakuza members enter the room. Looking down on the gang, Tanaka, their leader, tells Yusuke, "You're no more than insects!" This pisses him off as he asks them what's their deal, and if they fired someone named Shinogi for being incompetent. In response, Tanaka speaks about how a salaryman defeated the Hangure gang. As the mocking laughter fills the room, they take their chance to insult Kenshin, to the point that they suggest he takes his own life. Seeing Kenshin's reaction, the mad Yusuke asks Tanaka about his true intention. Claiming that their hands are tied because of a certain law, Tanaka says they'll have to work together in the future. Still making fun of Kenshin, he thanks him for giving him a good laugh. One of Tanaka's men pats his head and tells him he needs to be happy for successfully entertaining their leader. After minutes of trying not to let his emotions get the better of him, Kenshin mutters his signature line, "You were really unlucky today." Before the man can react, a solid kick in the face throws his eyeglasses, leaving his mouth bleeding. Kenshin then tells them that they put in a lot of effort to visit them just to die. The other Yakuza members interfere, but before one of them can even take his gun out, Kenshin strikes his body. The other guy steps in, only to get his wrinkled berries crushed, followed by his face. Having had enough of them teasing him, Kenshin warns them not to mess with him. Just then, the man in eyeglasses shows up. In an instant, he lifts his leg and points a pen on his neck. The man mentions that he did not expect Kenshin to go for a front kick in an actual fight. He adds that the former kickboxing champion is no different from an amateur, because he rarely uses his legs now as his weapons. And so he demands that he shows his full potential, while he keeps pointing the pen at his throat. Looking back at what happened, Kenshin can't believe that his opponent can read through his moves and thus react quickly. As he stands there frozen in place, Tanaka commands them to stop. After that, they start talking business. Tanaka announces that he has a job for Four Eyes, and that is to capture the guy who beat the Hangure, or more accurately, the salaryman who belongs to the sworn enemy's bloodline. There and then, Tanaka introduces Four Eyes as Gumakoji, a private assassin. It goes without saying that Yusuke and Kenshin are taken aback at the unexpected turn of events. While the former thinks Gumakoji is just an ordinary guy, he informs them that his name is only an alias. In a flash, he leaves the room to fulfill his duty. Meanwhile, his target watches his own video, with the unsuspecting Kate amazed at his strength, and Katsuragi saying that the fight was too dangerous for a young guy to get involved. As he keeps asking Akamori about his opinion on the clip, he sweats a lot in spite of the cold temperature. In connection with the ongoing investigation, they discovered that Akamori works at the Carvone company as a confectionery manufacturer. They also found out that he lives in an apartment with tight security, leaving them clueless about his apartment number. It appears that 1 week has already passed since the investigation started, and the martial artists are impatiently waiting for any interesting updates. Gumakoji explains to his superior that Akamori has been acting extra cautious lately because he might have figured out that he was being followed. As he gets accused of making up excuses by his superior, Gumakoji declares he is ready to go to war. Unsatisfied, a man points his gun at him. He alerts him that if he keeps slacking off, he'll be surrendered to the overseas mafias who are hunting him down. Using his pen, Gumakoji stabs his wrist and gives him a smack in the jaw. Turning his body around, he grabs his arm and smashes him on the floor. He notes that if only his targets are as weak as him, then his job will be a walk in the park. Gumakoji stresses that even though Akamori is being really careful, he will soon let his guard down. After 1 week of keeping a close watch on him, Gumakoji claims he will be dead in the next 3 hours. Back at the office, Katsuragi approaches Kate after a meeting. He praises her presentation, especially her idea about the fortune cookie Kame-chan. As a humble worker, she says she just got lucky. While Katsuragi highlights her promising performance as a first-timer in the planning department, he can't say the same to someone near them. Speak of the devil, he calls Akamori, seemingly spacing out, and questions his proposal about making bold eagle-shaped sweets. After admitting he is frustrated, Akamori says he will come up with a better idea, but his senior highly doubts it. Akamori points out that his idea is a new one, and he's the only person who can think of doing it. Just as Katsuragi explains that he's suggesting a corpse-eating bird, he shows Akamori his work with details that are too realistic to be a chocolate design. As expected, he can't see anything wrong with it. Once Katsuragi leaves them, Kate says that she likes Akamori's idea. This somehow gives him a push as he considers making cockroach crackers next time. With that, Kate suggests they quit being the ideators. Shortly, someone calls Akamori and asks about the interview they spoke about yesterday. He almost forgot it's happening at 2 p.m., so he immediately prepared himself. Before leaving, he informs Kate that the meeting will involve a discussion of the trainer's role in managing new graduates. She then says good luck to him, although it's not a big deal. On the other hand, Katsuragi turns up again to annoy Akamori as he urges him to mention his animal design in his interview. Minutes later, he arrives just in time at the meeting room. When the interviewer takes him inside, he asks how long the interview will take. The man, who turns out to be the assassin, says if things go smoothly, they can call it a wrap in 10 minutes. Akamori can't be any happier that the interview will end quickly. Sitting face to face with his prey, Gumakoji begins the interview, all the while flashing a fake smile. He notes that despite the repetitive routines, every professional in whatever field feels excitement once in a while. As such, when abducting an employee, he finds it easy to gain access to some confidential data, be it the workers or the company's information. With his mind flooded with different thoughts, he asks Akamori about the things he had observed while training new graduates. As he answers his question, he can't stop thinking about the Bloody Family's legendary killing art. Compared to his own method of assassinating an individual, he claims that killing itself is not the problem. However, it demands a flawless execution. Considering the place they are in and how troublesome things will get should he proceed with the brutal technique, Gumakoji decides to attack him from below with the blade on his shoe. As it seems, the blade is lethal as it is covered with a substance 70 times deadlier than a pufferfish's poison. Even though it can guarantee a victim's instant death, Gumakoji plans to suffocate Akamori if anything goes wrong. All set to finish him off, he asks the next question. This time, it's about the hardest part of his job. Indeed, given his daily struggles at work as a corporate slave, he can mention a lot. Wearing an evil stare, Gumakoji finally makes his move with the shoe. Much to his shock, Akamori stops his attack, going back to his second question. He answers, "Distractions like this are the hardest part of my job." Before Gumakoji pushes the table, Akamori does it first and slides back, forcing the former to do his version of the Matrix move. He then wonders when Akamori realized that he was planning a sneak attack. Switching to plan B, Gumakoji attempts to kick him. Akamori grabs the metal folding chair, blocking his attack and catching his leg with it. In a short while, he slams the assassin on the floor. Looking at Gumakoji visibly in pain, Akamori confesses that a professional targeting someone like him never crossed his mind. He adds that as a professional himself, he can see through his moves. Gumakoji realizes that he has been under his watchful eye the entire interview. Akamori states he did not become a professional yesterday, so it shouldn't come as a surprise. Letting out a sigh, Gumakoji figures out that he intentionally left an opening. To put it simply, he's been humbled quickly. According to the assassin, the last time he felt the overwhelming sensation was when he fought someone from the Ministry of Defense. Out of options, he takes his pen out. This is the part where it is revealed that it's a pen gun. Right away, he aims it at Akamori. Fortunately, he manages to dodge the bullet as it hits the wall. Akamori reminds him they are inside the office, to which Gumakoji replies that he will pay back the damages once he gets a bullet planted in his head. Switching to a brief flashback, Gumakoji's superior witnessed his lust for blood with his own eyes. According to him, the Luciano family is the most powerful mafia in the US, and they have hired a skilled assassin as their bodyguard. Gumakoji then mentioned that 3 people he killed, which turned out to be a part of a test to assess his strength. Regardless if it was an actual mission or not, he asked for additional payment for the 3 people he killed. Impressed at his capabilities, his superior approved his request. He then demanded an explanation about why he possesses exceptional strength. As it would seem, his superior selected heavyweight black belt judoist to challenge Gumakoji. and with the result, he found it unbelievable that he did not get a single scratch. When asked how he did it, he said it's simple logic, and his targets were too careless. Following his statement, the moment his targets get too comfortable around him, he'd strike as any experienced assassin would usually do. He added that the careless people can be classified into 3 categories, from the people who think they won't be a target, to the ones who are confident enough they won't get killed. There are people who believe they can defend themselves. Hearing this, his superior agreed. Gumakoji also shared that being friendly towards his target always makes a good head start. Even after hearing all his revelations, his superior admitted to being careless around him. Ultimately, he talked about Akamori, to which Gumakoji said if he's still active, then that would separate him from the others. With his background in martial arts and his experiences in actual combat, Gumakoji's logic doesn't apply to him. In other words, he is not careless. The battle continues in favor of Akamori as he pushes Gumakoji's body against the floor. Unable to move, he desperately extends his hand, seemingly reaching for something in his pocket. In the middle of the fight, Gumakoji admits to struggling in actual combat, especially against an opponent with murderous intent. When Akamori notices the slight movement he is making, Gumakoji throws an ID towards his face and takes his chance to escape his grip. Jumping away from Akamori with the backflip, he prepares to strike back. Grabbing the tube light bulb, he goes against his words and declares that people like Akamori can be careless sometimes. Now with 2-bladed shoes and a broken light bulb as his lightsaber, he charges at Akamori. Claiming that only professionals can execute his move, Gumakoji goes for a straight thrust. Just when he expects that the light bulb will hit his throat, Akamori reacts in time to stop him with the technique he calls the Calamity Terminator. Aside from disarming Gumakoji and striking him on the chin, he also blocks his bladed shoe. At that instant, Akamori says, "None of your shallow techniques will go through." Interestingly enough, Gumakoji seems satisfied at the sight of his opponent claiming a premature victory. Taking the situation as an opportunity to change the course of battle, he reveals his secret weapon, his middle finger, a modified finger to be exact. During his meeting with his superior, Gumakoji showed it and revealed that it's an aluminum dagger. Modern assassins have used the weapon since it was released as science and technology's latest invention. The moment he acquired the modified finger, he knew it would be his trump card to win against anyone, whether or not his opponent is a martial artist. That being said, he pointed out that it was made to counter a martial artist. Just when Gumakoji believes he can finally hit back, he suddenly can't move his hand. While he looks confused, Akamori repeats himself that he won't be able to touch him, not even with his toy. To explain his current condition, he informs Gumakoji that the punch earlier damaged the sensitive bones in his chin area. As a result, he won't be able to move his body for the time being, leaving him at a loss for words. Slowly walking away from the assassin, Akamori reminds him not to underestimate the power of a martial arts, as he just lost against him. He also tells Gumakoji he has no idea who hired him, but he refuses to ask him. Even so, Akamori seems aware that he's being pursued because of his viral videos. Calling Gumakoji careless, Akamori tells him they are living in a completely different world. Just then, someone knocks on the door, wiping Akamori's cool expression. He gets back to his usual self in the office almost immediately. He tells the person knocking to wait, but the door just opens, revealing a beautiful girl. As the two guys who were just fighting act as if nothing happened, the girl informs him that someone will use the meeting room at 3 p.m. Not long after saying sorry, Akamori requests another 2 minutes to finish their discussion. Just as she leaves the room, he tells Gumakoji he has no time to deal with them. As a dedicated salaryman, Akamori claims he's too busy at work and it's a matter of life and death. Hearing this, Gumakoji's tense expression lightens up a bit as he finally understands what he meant when he said that they live in different worlds. Soon enough, night strikes and the employees leave the office. Zooming in on the building, someone is spotted at the rooftop, introducing herself as a UN secret agent. She's on a call with an unknown person. As expected, she's the girl Akamori met earlier. She then delivers the news about Gumakoji's failed attempt to assassinate Akamori. She notes that the original plan to kill Gumakoji after he eliminates Akamori is no longer possible. Even so, the outcome of his mission did not stop her from killing him. After learning that she got rid of Gumakoji, the person on the other line orders her to do the same with Akamori. Before ending the call, the person urges her to act before anyone else. It is then revealed that after Akamori saved her the trouble of finishing off Gumakoji with ease, he attracted more attention, particularly from the assassins. In a short amount of time, the news of Gumakoji disappearing after his encounter with Akamori spreads around the assassin's world. As such, a black-haired girl and a buff guy exchange conversation about the news. Coincidentally enough, another assassin overhears what they're talking about, with the man stating that no one cares if an assassin dies. She then receives a message warning her to be careful so as not to share Gumakoji's tragic fate. Despite the serious warning, she doesn't know exactly how to react because of the emojis in the text. For one guy standing in the middle of the street while saying Akamori's name, another one appears. A group of men welcomes his arrival in Japan and addresses him as captain. As the events unfold, martial artists and fighters from different countries join the scene, sharing one intention, and that is to defeat Akamori and earn the title of being the strongest. Going back to the events before Gumakoji passed away, the girl waited outside the meeting room until Akamori left the building. Once she was sure that Akamori was out of sight, she returned to the meeting room. After that, she asked Gumakoji if the space was already available, to which he said yes and apologized for the trouble they caused. He also claimed that he accidentally broke the light bulb, which left the room in a mess, and so he asked the girl to choose another room instead. Suddenly, she removed her wig, revealing a long black hair hiding underneath. At that moment, the girl told Gumakoji that for someone known as the legendary assassin, he's such a disappointment. She then called him Allbug Silva, leaving him wondering why she knew his real name. She revealed that he and Akamori have been added to the United Nations target list. When asked if the UN came all the way to Japan just to capture him, she said not exactly, because she was the only cleaning personnel under UN intelligence operatives. Her name is Lily, a UN secret agent who got rid of anything evil to protect peace. Gumakoji noticed that for someone who works toward peace, she was too excited to assassinate him. He then stated that Lily got the kill order mixed up. Gumakoji revealed that earlier that day, he sent a message to his previous organization, the Luciato family, and instructed them to spread the news that he was defeated by Akamori. Due to this, more people will take an interest in challenging Akamori, be it a revenger, a fighter, or anyone who desires to be the strongest. If anything, it would also be his way to avenge himself, but unfortunately he wouldn't be able to see it. As he was unable to move, she took his life in an instant. Taking his smart plan for revenge aside, Lily couldn't wait to witness a good show exclusive to powerful people. The following day at the office, Kate notices there's something up with Akamori. As such, he spills his coffee on his suit. Ironically, he's the one who asks if everything's okay, to which she says no. Just then, he recalls what happened yesterday as he worries that someone might have seen them. Struggling to focus on his work, he stands from his desk. Knowing full well that he can't afford to get fired from his job once the company finds any evidence, he decides to check the meeting room. To his surprise, the room is already clean. Not only that, a painting covered the bullet hole, and the broken fluorescent light was replaced. For a second, he wonders if Gumakoji is behind it. While he's at it, Katsuragi calls him out for slacking off at work and reminds him about their meeting with the boss. He assures his senior that he will quickly get prepared and ignores him when he asks about his stained shirt. Later that day, the trio with their boss are seen inside a bar. While Katsuragi asks Akamori to order, the latter notes that a drinking party is still part of their work. Sharing the same table with the boss and his colleagues, Akamori worries if he will make a good impression with his social skills. Trying to remember the contents of the book about the art of drinking parties, he scans the menu, searching for the appropriate food for the group. Taking their ages into consideration, Akamori finally orders. Minutes later, the waiter serves them with 4 bowls of ice cream. An awkward silence follows until Katsuragi breaks it. Feeling embarrassed, he gives all the ice cream to the confused Akamori. His senior apologizes to their boss and explains that Akamori is just being his usual self. To make him feel any better, Kate takes an ice cream. Akamori tries to settle his nerves as he wonders why they didn't like what he ordered when he only followed the book. A few moments later, Kate becomes drunk, all the while fanning her shirt to cool off. Joining her is Akamori, who is obviously not a heavy drinker. As if he's the one to talk, he urges Kate to drink more as a member of society. Katsuragi can't believe that Akamori got drunk after 3 drinks. He then leaves the table for a moment to go to the toilet. Walking unsteadily and feeling like throwing up, he questions his low alcohol tolerance. Out of nowhere, a guy lunges at him with a kick. Despite being under the influence of alcohol, Akamori manages to block the attack. Feeling a bit dizzy, he suddenly loses his balance. Sehwan, the man who attacked him, praises his skills. However, he calls him careless for being drunk at that very moment. With people watching them, Jaehwan informs Akamori that he easily found him because of the video circulating online. Still in his fighting stance, Jaehwan declares that his homeland is waiting for his death. Talking to himself, Akamori thinks of the best course of action. Even though he's drunk, he can kill him on the spot if he wants to, but there are too many people. He considers running away, but he brushes it aside given his current condition. Running out of options, he decides to take the fight outside to avoid getting himself exposed to his colleagues. Just as he asks Jaehwan to meet him outside, Kate turns up, startling him. She then asks what's happening, leaving him restless. With the huge possibility that Jaehwan will go for another surprise attack, Akamori wonders how he can send Kate back upstairs before he acts. He also considers making a flashy exit, but he knows it won't make any difference if Jaehwan chases after him. With options that will eventually cause a commotion, he begins to panic. That is until a sudden noise grabs everyone's attention. Turns out that someone kicked a chair for no apparent reason. The guy then walks toward Akamori while mocking Jaehwan for wearing a hoodie like the usual loner characters. Calling Akamori a salaryman, he tells him to wait outside once he's done drinking. As expected, it's none other than Kenshin, who points out that he needs to discuss an important matter with Akamori. Not long after looking at him closely, he remembers meeting him elsewhere. While Akamori asks what brought him there, Jaehwan confronts Kenshin and commands him to get lost. He then warns him, saying, "If you interfere, I'll kill you too." Shortly, Kenshin signals Akamori to step back. The former then announces that Jaehwan is today's unlucky guy. Before he can finish his words, Kenshin launches a front kick in an attempt to scare him away. As Jaehwan stands there frowning, Kenshin comments he has urgent matters to deal with, so he asks him to leave at once or die. Switching to a different country in a breathtaking city, an elderly man mutters that Jaehwan has been finally sent to Japan. Following his narrative, 20 years have passed since he's been taken out of the orphanage. From an innocent child, Jaehwan transformed into his country's strongest revenge machine. At a very young age, he'd been subjected to intense training and was provided extra growth hormones. Since day one, he's been made aware that his purpose in life is to eliminate the Akamori clan. The elderly man notes that through Jaehwan, he will finally get his revenge after Akamori took his son's life. He acknowledges Jaehwan's strength surpassing that of his late son, who was once dubbed as a national hero. That said, he believes the general public should not know that such a monster exists. Back at the bar, Akamori's still getting all worked up. As Kenshin provokes Jaehwan, Akamori covers Kate's face. He then asks Kenshin if he's planning to fight Jaehwan there and then. In response, he inquires if he is willing to take his place instead, given the presence of his colleague. Well, that settles it as Akamori takes Kate back upstairs and leaves the two behind. Just as Kenshin is about to strike again, Jaehwan orders him to wait. Offended, Kenshin asks if he desperately wants to die, to which Jaehwan suggests taking the fight outside. At the same time, Akamori hesitates to leave Kenshin alone with the new guy, but he has no choice. Once outside, they stand there, looking stiff, with both parties refusing to initiate a conversation. Looking at Kenshin, Jaehwan checks his physique and judges his weird behavior. After that, he concludes he's not normal. Of course, Kenshin assumes that Jaehwan is one of the many guys who are after Akamori for revenge. In connection with the urgent matter he was talking about, Kenshin asks Jaehwan to reschedule his revenge and allow him to have Akamori first. By any chance that he protests against it, then he has to take him down first. In a blink of an eye, Jaehwan initiates the battle. With a sidekick, he cuts the lantern in two, catching Kenshin off guard. While he suddenly can't speak, Jaehwan declares he finds it unacceptable when a person assumes what he's going through in life. When he starts lifting his leg, Kenshin gets back to his senses. He moves a short distance and takes up his fighting stance. Jaehwan becomes aggressive as he throws different types of kicks. Kenshin manages to dodge his attacks until he leaps in the air and aims for his head. Luckily, the flying kick did not hit him, but he destroyed other stuff outside. As the fight intensifies, Kenshin notices the sharpness of his opponent's every single move. Switching his movements without struggling, he keeps launching powerful kicks, one after another. To add, he possesses a great sense of balance and extraordinary speed. Looking at his technique closely, he wonders if Jaehwan is also a kickboxer like him until he realizes he is not. Before he knows it, Jaehwan, a taekwondo master, inches closer to him and draws the first blood. Or so he thought. It appears that before his kick landed on his body, he jumped back. From feeling a bit threatened earlier, Kenshin lets out a sigh of relief. According to him, taekwondo was considered the weakest standing technique. He adds that the WTF, not the internet slang, but the World Taekwondo Federation, is the cause of the misunderstanding due to the irregularities of their point system. Contrary to the ITF or the International Taekwondo Federation, they don't focus on theories or ideas because they highlight the damage that can be inflicted through taekwondo. Having said that, Kenshin firmly believes that kickboxing is superior to taekwondo. To prove his claim, he explains that taekwondo mainly depends on footwork, and its primary damage comes from the individual speed and roundhouse kicks. He also mentions the 4 steps that add more power to roundhouse kicks. With the steps that need to be executed first, Kenshin points out that a kickboxer can throw a quick punch or a low kick, and thus claim victory. However, a taekwondo expert can choose to skip the last step by clinching and forcing an elbow strike. Given the fact that kickboxing still has the advantage, he's certain it is better than taekwondo. In Jaehwan's case, however, he believes that he is an exception, not to mention that he's driven by murderous intent. Moreover, he wears steel safety shoes, leaving Kenshin groaning when he steps on his foot. Any normal person will struggle to move on a daily basis, as the weight of the shoes when combined weighs approximately 4 kilograms. With Jaehwan's speed that has become his weapon, Kenshin, kneeling on the ground, claims that his opponent's taekwondo is no different from a killer's martial art. While Jaehwan aims for an axe kick that can easily crush Kenshin's head, he tackles his body with great force. Turns out that Kenshin took advantage of Jaehwan's strength as he quickly reacted when the latter raised his leg with his heavy shoes. After it caused an outward force, his foot that was stepping on the ground moved upward, giving Kenshin the chance to strike back. Despite the noticeable gap in power, Kenshin proves that it's not all about strength as he pins a tough opponent on the ground. In a matter of seconds, he turned the battle in his favor and awakened his daredevil side. Putting away his kickboxing pride, Kenshin gives off a pure killing intent towards Jaehwan. Just as he's about to take him down, the police officers arrive at the scene and ask what they're doing. When they order them to separate, Jaehwan tells Kenshin to get up. As they refuse to narrate what happened, the officers drag them inside the police car for their interrogation. Sometime later, in a crowded street, the two guys keep arguing. In a low voice, Jaehwan says, "Next time, I'll kill you." To which Kenshin responds with a single word, "Ah?" As one of the police officers reports the incident to the station. They take their chance to escape, and they successfully flee the scene. Around this time, Akamori and Kate express their gratitude to their boss before they go their separate ways. Just as Katsuragi and their boss leave, Kate suggests they walk home together since they are headed in the same direction. Akamori says sorry, claiming he's on an important call, so he asks her to go on ahead. Kate sulks as she walks alone in the street. As soon as she's far enough, Akamori ends the fake call. Later that night, he chances upon Kenshin, seemingly disappointed when he asks what he's doing. Kenshin shares that despite suffering fractures in his lower leg, he paid no attention to it just to meet him. Much to his dismay, Akamori only tells him to go to the hospital. Unwilling to go home empty-handed, Kenshin grabs his shoulder to persuade him. When he tells Akamori he really needs to discuss something important with him, he declines, stressing that it's almost time for the last train. Desperate to at least get a 30-minute talk with Akamori, Kenshin gives him a taxi fare amounting to 20,000 yen. They stare at each other's eyes once more, but now for a different reason. In the end, Akamori agrees to listen to whatever he has to say, but on one condition. Rather than a condition, he decides to call it a responsibility, leaving Kenshin irritated as he asks what he means. While he can easily pinpoint a specific vertebrae, Akamori confesses that he doesn't know how to call a taxi, so he asks Kenshin to do him the favor. Just as he agrees, he also requests him to buy him coffee. Later that night, the two finally speak with each other like normal people. When Akamori asks why he knows where he lives, Kenshin tells him that he might be the only person who's not aware of what's happening with his personal information. Soon afterward, he reveals that Akamori's personal details have been passed around in the criminal underground. He adds that the assassin he defeated was the one behind it. Coming from the infamous Bloody family, Kenshin is not surprised that powerful people have their eyes set on Akamori. After a brief pause, he reminds him to stop glaring at him. On that note, Kenshin shares that he only has a simple request for him. He calls it Fujin, and while he assumes Akamori already has an idea about it, he's literally loading. According to Kenshin, Fujin is a martial arts event that has been held since 4 years ago. While it has the basic rules like that of modern kickboxing, the fight holds no regard for rules or rank. Meaning to say, it's a deathmatch and without question, it's their main selling point. Whoever claims the victory will be rewarded a huge amount of money and attract the attention of advertisers. For fighters, Kenshin notes that winning Fujin is their endgame. When Akamori asks if he wants him to participate, Kenshin immediately says no. Turns out that he's the one who wants to join, and he has his reason. Clenching his fist, Akamori admits he won't make it, considering his current capabilities. As he puts it, the only thing he can brag about is his title as the former kickboxing junior champion. Without it, he's nothing but a typical fighter. This leads him to ask the descendant of the greatest martial artist family, or more specifically Akamori, to train him. While Kenshin is having a main character moment, Akamori completely ignores him and walks away. He runs after him, all the while shouting. He makes it clear that he's serious about it. Looking down at the ground, Kenshin states that as someone who walked down the wrong path, he's desperate to put himself in the limelight as a redemption. Akamori advises him to practice non-stop, to which he replies he must have something to show. And so Kenshin confesses that he's doing everything so his sister can live a normal life. Hearing this, Akamori's expression changes as an image of a girl, visibly wounded after battling it out with him, collapses on the floor. Muttering the word normal, Akamori declares he's not interested. However, he suddenly drops his bag to give him a chance. If Kenshin can at least inflict any damage on his body within a minute, he will reconsider his decision. He then complains that it's too soon for a test, and he's still injured. In response, Akamori says he's drinking sake and he won't even try to counterattack. To somehow motivate him, he says, "Well, if I were you, I'd go forth with all my power." As he starts counting 60 seconds, Kenshin makes up his mind and tells Akamori to stop underestimating him. Determined to prove himself, he aims for his head, only for his attack to be blocked. He proceeds with a sneak attack down below, but the result is just the same. From looking down at the salaryman on their first encounter, Kenshin can't believe that the same guy is now teaching him. He throws a right hook, but still, he defends himself against it. When he goes for a left hook, Akamori tosses the can to block his punch. After a few twirls, the can lands on Akamori's hand, while Kenshin stands there caught up in his leg, barely managing to maintain his balance. At that point, Akamori stresses that when he puts his foot out, he deals weak punches. He notes that all it takes is a reaction to dodge his attacks. As Kenshin falls to the ground, Akamori places the can on his forehead and comments that he's aware of his own limits. Just then, Akamori tells them that he's not showing any signs of killing intent. As he points out that Kenshin is not going all out, he declares that he won't go anywhere. Hearing this, Kenshin's eyes darken as he recalls a painful memory. Switching to another flashback, Kenshin, as the leader of the kickboxing club, would always get targeted by bad guys. Indeed, he was quite popular, but sadly for an unfortunate reason. He tried to reason out with them and told them he hadn't done anything. However, they couldn't just let him go because they were hired to give him a hard time. As such, someone ordered them to break his legs. Before that, one of them took his phone out and showed him something. Surrounded by evil smiles, Kenshin can still hear their voices saying it's over for his sister. As soon as the can drops, he jumps into the rail and uses the impact to launch himself toward the surprised Akamori. Screaming, "I've still not given up!" Kenshin charges at Akamori with the technique he calls the honorable death tackle. However, he manages to grab his bag and use it as a shield. He's all set to carry out his next attack until he can't move his body. And before he knows it, his 1 minute is over. Akamori goes for a foot sweep, tripping Kenshin, and again, he finds himself on the ground. He then mentions that he rolled pretty well despite his injury. Upon witnessing his last move, Akamori states he's glad that he put more drive into his attack. Even so, he still has issues with stability. As per Akamori, without stability, both his attack and defense will be ineffective. He adds that stability depends on the person's flexibility. In his case, he has limbs that are more flexible than those of athletes. By increasing his flexibility, the body's stability will follow, and his hip and knee joints will expand their range of motion. In other words, his offensive and defensive aspects will greatly improve. He then comments that they will start the training from there. With the confused Kenshin in the background, Akamori shows his index finger with a cracked nail. He says he should be thankful he is drunk as he just decided on something that goes against his own rules. Looking at Akamori about to throw up, Kenshin calls him an honest teacher. Later that night, outside the Akamori residence, the buff guy claims they've been waiting there for 6 hours. The black-haired girl corrects him, saying it's only 5 hours and 12 minutes. Bored to death, he walks nearer to the girl and suggests they use their free time to buy some magazines. She rejects the idea until he starts making inappropriate advances on her body. Irritated, she warns the guy that she will report him to the representative, forcing him to step back and apologize. Fully aware that there are people watching them, she asks him to use his free time to get rid of them, because they will only get in their way. Despite being outnumbered, he's confident he can take them all down. On the other hand, Akamori, with traces of vomit still on his face, sets aside wiping them off as he confirms to Kenshin if someone is really after his family. He says maybe and mentions that his workplace, commuting route, and home address have all been leaked. Claiming that it's the worst day of his life, Akamori decides to stay the night at Kenshin's house. Back at Akamori's residence, the outdoor posts reveal the faces of the people behind the shadows loitering around. Seeing them clearly, the man says he did not expect that they would have some company while waiting for their target. As he prepares himself for some action, the girl, calling him Hulk, alerts him that if she gets hurt in any way, the representative will surely know. It is then revealed that they are both agents of the National Police as special investigators, with the girl named Yuna and the Hulk guy named Tsuyoshi. In a short while, he approaches the guys he thinks of as easy opponents. The man with the Bruce Lee hairstyle attempts to punch him, but Hulk answers it with a palm strike. Smirking at his broken jaw, he says, "Nice try." This leaves his comrades angry. From knocking the guy unconscious, Hulk breaks his other bones and secures his first kill of the night. As he expresses his disappointment toward his opponent, the bald guy lunges at him and manages to pin him on the ground. While the second guy declares to get even with him, he activates the Uno reverse card and turns his face into a punching bag. Not long after his second kill, the man with a scar on his face takes out a knife. But before he can stab Hulk, he grabs his arm and neck. As he threatens to use his own knife on him, Yuna notes that bare-knuckle boxing and close-quarters combat don't go well together. Just as he mentions his third kill, someone shuts him up. After that, blood drips down from his nose. With Yuna left speechless, Hulk wonders where he heard the kapap method of fighting. The last man standing from the group shares that kapap is applicable to any situation because it offers a wide range of techniques. He adds that it's a martial art that focuses on countering. According to him, the kapap system was developed in Israel and it was mainly used by anti-terrorist organizations. He learned all of it back in the army. After realigning his crooked nose, Hulk comments that his opponent is more like a boxer than a martial artist. Done with the small talk, he throws another punch, but this time, Hulk dodges it. At the parking lot near Akamori's residence, someone is spotted watching the intense fight. Turns out that it's Lily, and she's talking on the phone with the mysterious person they called the representative. Following their conversation, it appears that she's interested in Hulk. She then says they're just wasting time because Akamori isn't coming. When asked how she knows it, she refuses to say anything as a UN secret agent. Lily claims they can rely on the newbie, and there's no need for the special investigators to intervene. After a brief pause, the representative states that the special investigators conduct operations in line with underground investigations. Basically, they capture, confine, and interrogate criminals, but in some cases, they create fake evidence, and they don't hesitate to kill. Lastly, anyone who stands in their way will be dealt with. Hearing this, Lily notes that it's quite a threat. Just then, she looks at her windscreen to continue watching the fight until she notices that only 2 people are left standing. Apparently, Hulk defeated the 4th guy as he stood on top of his lifeless body. At the same time, the representative tells Lily not to underestimate Hulk. Upon witnessing his strength, she becomes more interested in him. Around this time, inside a high-rise building, the chaotic duo arrives at Kenshin's home. In exchange for granting his request, he announces that Akamori can stay in his place for a while. Looking around, he comments that Kenshin is quite rich. Before he can throw more questions about his wealth, Kenshin shares that he's a member of the Shinjuku Savages. Among all the Hangure gangs, they are responsible for bringing in the most money as they run underground casinos and offer the oldest profession. After hearing his revelation, Akamori fell silent. He then points out that Kenshin is the type of person he doesn't want to get involved with. In response, he tells Akamori, "You're one to talk." Kenshin admits that he had always wanted to leave the gang, but he's still waiting for the right timing. As he puts it, he has no idea when he will be caught or killed. He adds that it will be troublesome if his sister gets caught up in that kind of business. At once, Akamori advises him to stop what he's doing, but it's not that simple. Switching the topic to their teacher and student relationship, Kenshin reminds him of their deal. However, he's still waiting until he fully recovers from his foot injury. Kenshin states he will stay in the room next to his, leaving Akamori questioning just how rich he is. The whole setup is not only for their training but also for Akamori's sake. While he finds it unnecessary, Kenshin lets him know that his room will be automatically locked up once or twice a day. Indeed, the most gifted killer in the bloody family can't believe he's being treated as such. A few days pass, and there's not much going on around the city until 1 week later. Lily makes her 4th appearance. Still in bed, she reports to her superior. As it seems, she has discovered that Akamori no longer lives in his home, and he has been staying in the house of a member of the Hangure gang. She then informs her superior that there are still people waiting outside Akamori's residence as they have yet to find out that he has abandoned his home. When asked about their identity, Lily mentions they are the special investigators and the American P3 Army. Her superior remarks that they're up against other countries now. Lily makes it clear that she's not having a hard time and assures her superior that once she finds Akamori, he will be put to death. That being said, Lily claims that things will be complicated if Akamori dies and his father and brothers find out about it. And so, her superior asks her what's her plan. Grinning, she answers with one word: seduction. That's it. Lily is planning to make Akamori fall for her charms. Unaware that someone is planning to make a move on him and meet his family, Akamori peacefully brushes his teeth. The next scene shows a father and his daughter Shiori having breakfast together. When he asks her to join the karate practice next week, she declines, saying she's staying at her friend's house. Ultimately, she admits that she wants to stop training. She stresses that it doesn't matter if she practices or not because she's on a winning streak of 3 in full contact karate. Going by the name Satoru, he tells Shiori, the same girl who overheard Yuna and Hulk in the streets, that she's being like that because she has yet to face a genius like Akamori. Letting out a sigh, Shiori asks who Akamori is, as her father keeps talking about him. With that, Satoru narrates that a long time ago, he once bumped into an extremely talented martial artist. It was during the time when youngsters would dominate the competition and take the titles, one after another. In short, it was the peak of youth. One time, someone rumored to be on the same level as Satoru challenged him in an unofficial match. By the time he arrived at their meeting place, someone was already standing next to his supposed opponent. It was Kazuo, another Akamori who also knew the legendary killing art. He was only 8 back then, so Satoru doubted him. That was until he witnessed the young boy destroy the karate practitioner without breaking a sweat. Hearing this, Shiori wonders if her father is making it all up, but he says that what he saw has been engraved in his memory. Satoru then mentions the main character, Akamori, who he believes is no different from his older brother. But then, he has allowed himself to be seen now. When asked if he wants to meet him, Satoru says he's not sure if he should feel jealous of his strength or be inspired to become stronger. Even so, he believes Akamori has grown tired of staining his hands with blood. Taking up residence in Kenshin's house for a month now, Akamori stretches his arms as he admits that living there isn't so bad. If there's one thing he complains about, it's Kenshin, who's been lying on the floor for hours. He claims that he wanted to practice, but he got careless. Akamori says that Kenshin being careless is proof that he's still alive. Jokes aside, the teacher alerts his student that if he keeps doing it, he won't improve. Akamori advises him to do yoga too to help him properly execute the technique. Going back to his room, Akamori says he will practice the technique inside. Too early to finish their training session, Kenshin asks him to stay in the training room. From acting lazy, he's now all fired up as he asks Akamori to launch an attack. However, he refuses and commands him to practice by himself. Feeling upset, Kenshin reminds him that he's living inside his house, to which Akamori replies it doesn't mean he will just follow his orders. Sometime later, Akamori was forced to accompany Kenshin after he took his room key. It appears that they are outside the Madokawa Assembly Hall headquarters, which produced several national and international champions in the field of karate. Kenshin adds that they are the most famous karate organization in the country. While Akamori assumes that they're going to fight them, Kenshin makes it clear that they're going to learn from them. As Akamori wonders if they will be reported, if ever, someone calls for their attention. Turns out that it's Satoru, who immediately asked if he just stumbled upon Akamori. Just as he confirms his identity, Satoru apologizes and introduces himself as the current director of the place. Meeting him there, Kenshin is unsure if it's just a coincidence. Suddenly, Satoru declares he has some matters to discuss with him. Rather than put it into words, he attacks Akamori. After dodging his punch, he looks at Satoru, wondering what he's up to. Upon confirming that he's a member of the karate organization, Akamori decides that he becomes his student's first opponent. Kenshin tries to stop him, but he tells him it's fine. He then informs Satoru that he will pass as it might affect his reputation as a salaryman. On that note, Kenshin hurries to take his place, with Satoru already in his fighting stance. Thrilled, Kenshin strikes first, but the old man manages to block his attack. Forced to be on the defensive, Satoru wonders if he's fighting Akamori's bodyguard. As someone who had spent 40 years training to become stronger, he doesn't want to waste the opportunity. And so, he throws a punch and shouts, "Don't mess with me!" Even though his attack did not land straight at Kenshin's face, he managed to scratch his skin. The following scene shows one of their training sessions, particularly a discussion about his opponent's strength. Akamori notes that if Kenshin will have to face a former kickboxing champion, his experience in street fighting will be his advantage against his strategy. To counter his opponent's sheer strength, Akamori suggests exchanging blows. After that, he must use his fist and head. Putting his teacher's words into action, Kenshin thinks of a way to startle Satoru. As he deals another blow, Kenshin leans backward and delivers a kick on his gut. Akamori notes that his opponent won't be able to find out what hit him as if it's an invisible kick. That being said, it can't be considered a decisive strike. To deal more damage, he suggests a twist kick, which requires using his whole body. If anything, the experts claim it's highly technical, making it difficult to perform. Akamori compares it to a corkscrew blow, but then the difficulty between throwing a punch or a kick differs. He also mentions that there are martial artists who aren't capable of twisting a kick. With a turned out hip position, coordinated timing with his joints, and increased flexibility, Kenshin successfully lands a solid twist kick on his opponent. Satoru cries out as the pain takes over his body. With Akamori pointing out that it's not a one-hit kill, Satoru refuses to back down. To finish him off, Kenshin positions himself on his back. With Satoru, who is yet to recover from the twist kick's damage, he takes up a defensive stance and hesitates to counterattack. Moving around his opponent, Kenshin aims for his neck. According to Akamori, when barehanded, targeting a person's neck works best. But aiming for the carotid artery, it will decrease one's heart rate and blood pressure, and thus leads to becoming unconscious. Following what his teacher taught him, Kenshin deals the final blow, leaving Satoru screaming in agony. As he slowly crashes into the ground, he asks Akamori if he did the technique right. He comments that his execution is still not flawless. Instead of 100 points that Kenshin is expecting to get, Akamori gives him 40 points. As it turns out, Lily has been watching them the entire time. At that moment, she finally learns that Akamori is teaching Kenshin, and not what she initially thought after finding out they live next to each other. While wondering what to do with Kenshin, a man with a cigarette inquires if Lily is also after Akamori. As he starts making suggestive remarks towards her, she launches a back kick, but surprisingly, he dodges it. Before the man leaves, he expresses his interest in meeting her again. Later that night, Akamori finally gets his home key as he is seen reading a book while lying in bed. He just started reading when someone knocked on his door. He unwillingly gets up from bed. As soon as he opens the door, he is greeted by a girl who introduces herself as his neighbor. His irritated expression quickly fades when she apologizes for disturbing him, not to mention that she's acting cute in front of him. When he asks what happened, Lily claims there are bugs in her room. With tears welling up in her eyes, she says she's scared. As she tries to get Akamori inside her room, Kenshin arrives and volunteers to help her. Judging by the look in their eyes, Akamori feels relieved while Lily feels otherwise. He immediately closes the door and leaves the rest to Kenshin. He then questions her statement about having bugs in her room, given where they live. Still keeping the act up, Lily says she's not lying and stresses that she can't sleep because of the bugs. Just as Kenshin proceeds to help Lily, she decides to get rid of him. The next day in the office, Katsuragi informs Kate that he bought an apartment. While showing her the picture, he adds that he has already moved in. From the 10th floor there, one can enjoy the view of Tokyo Tower like in famous dramas. Katsuragi then shares that his wife is staying at her parents' house for the time being, so they're currently not together. Even so, they prioritized buying an apartment in Tokyo. After looking at the picture closely, Kate asks her senior about the girl who took the photo. With a flinch, Katsuragi claims it was his older sister. Shortly, one of his juniors greet him. As he starts talking about the girl who took the photo, Katsuragi rushes to stop him. Glaring at her senior, Kate calls him the worst for being a ladies' man and bringing them inside their house. He tries to come up with an excuse, but Kate is clearly not having it. Just as he apologizes, Akamori comes running to the office until he trips and falls to the floor. While he's gasping for breath, Katsuragi asks what happened to him. When his senior mentions the chief, Akamori regrets not informing him that he will be late. Kate then comments that being late does not exist in his dictionary. Walking to his workplace, Akamori shares that he woke up and left home early, but he went back to pick up something he forgot. Hearing this, Katsuragi doesn't buy it, all the while thinking he slept in. In the end, Akamori admits that it's because of the elevator rush. As he puts it, the elevator was taking forever to come down. When asked what floor he lives on, he says 42nd. While Kate doesn't say anything, Katsuragi loses his cool and accuses Akamori of lying. His senior then asks where his apartment is, so he takes his phone out. Upon learning that the rent for his apartment amounts to more than 1,000,000 yen, they can't believe it. Of course, he reveals that he's not the one paying for it. Alarmed, Katsuragi asks if he's doing something illegal, to which Akamori immediately says no. Unwilling to share all the details, he says he's only staying there temporarily. Thankfully, Katsuragi finally stops bugging him. On the other hand, Kate, seemingly pleased to see Akamori, tells him that a change in residence can affect someone's emotions. In this case, she observes that he looks more peaceful lately. As they continue talking with each other, Katsuragi cuts in and asks if he can see the Tokyo Tower from his place. In response, Akamori reveals that aside from the Tokyo Tower, he can also see the Tokyo Skytree, Roppongi Hills, and Mount Fuji, leaving Kate amazed. With a smirk, she slowly turns around to face their senior. The annoyed Katsuragi speaks about Akamori's tardiness again. As he threatens to bring the matter to the chief, Kate warns him that she will reveal his secret to his wife. While they keep arguing, Akamori gets back to work, but he can't stop thinking about what Kate told him. As it would seem, after his personal information made rounds in the criminal underground, he expected that he wouldn't be living in peace from then on. However, after a month since he moved, only Satoru attacked him. Confused, he wonders if the current situation will stay as it is. Elsewhere, Hulk figures out that aside from them, there are still a lot of organizations that are after Akamori. That said, at the moment, some of them have kept their distance. He then mentions the UN agent, who he believes is not a typical agent. After hearing his report, the representative who's drinking coffee and milk at the same time clarifies if he's suggesting that they should not get involved with the UN's targets. Thinking of another option, Hulk suggests wiping them all out and not caring about what the general public will say. The representative rejects it and points out that they can't act recklessly, especially since they have no idea about what other organizations can do. In the middle of their meeting, the representative's phone rings. Turns out that it's Lily on the other line, asking if his special investigators are doing a great job. With Yuna and Hulk in the background, the representative admits that they haven't made any progress because of her involvement. For what it's worth, she apologizes. She then reminds the representative that they are not competing with each other, so she demands that they keep her updated. Not long after getting on each other's nerves, the representative makes it clear that they won't yield. Upon ending the call, Lily declares she's in control of the situation. Later that night, near a public bathroom, Akamori notices he's being followed. Minutes later, one of the unknown men contacts someone and reports that Akamori hasn't come out of the bathroom for 45 minutes. The Baldy claims that he might have taken his own life after being a corporate slave for years. To check what's really going on, one of them volunteers to enter the bathroom. A few moments later, he comes across his target. Before he can even react, Akamori punches him, sending him crashing to the ground. With fear in his eyes, the man regrets that he took one for the team. As he crawls on the floor, Akamori tells him that he made his neck muscle stiff. He won't be able to walk in an hour, and his neck region will give him too much discomfort. Akamori confronts the man and asks if he's the one following him. From asking the man about his objective, the organization he works for, and if he's alone, Akamori feels frustrated because he won't say a single word. Unwilling to spend more time inside the bathroom, he leaves the man and warns him not to bother him again. Struggling to get on his knees, the man mutters he shouldn't take his eyes off him. Just then, Akamori runs into three guys, seemingly not associated with the men wearing black suits. While the bloke with the pencil mustache wonders if they're enemies, the Baldy still waits for their comrade's update. One by one, the three weird men state why they desperately want to meet Akamori. With confusion written all over his face, he asks himself, what's up with these guys? In a short while, they talk in chorus, leaving him too stunned to speak. As the noise threatens to burst his eardrums, Akamori tells them to shut up. In mere seconds, he takes them down. Scared to move and make a noise, the man stands like a statue after watching Akamori beat 3 people. Standing in the middle of the weird guys, he expresses his disappointment at the weaklings he fought. On the way home, he announces, "At least come at me, one at a time, a person a day."